Well, what an afternoon in Bay Area sports. Had to bring Lucas back on to talk because he just got done watching the same game that we were all watching. Warriors Kings, they win in game 7. This is on the heels of the NFL draft for the 49ers. So, hell of a weekend for Northern California sports. I know that a lot of Kings fans watched this show. It was a nice season for them. They had the top offensive rating in NBA history this year, but it wasn't enough to beat Steph Curry when Steph Curry just went, berserk right here in game 7. 50 points. We'd never seen it before. Both of our jaws dropped, Lucas, as we were watching that game.
Yeah, to the Kings fans out there watching this, I'm sorry. I still have my Warriors jersey on from that game, but I think you summed it up pretty well. The Warriors had the best player on the floor, and especially in a Game 7 environment, it's oftentimes having the best player on the floor doing things that only he can do that's going to make the difference. The Kings surprised me with how they performed in Game 6. After Game 5, I thought that the Warriors would take care of business at home as they have all year and throughout the last 10 years, really, with the dynasty. But the Kings made some adjustments. I think Mike Brown did a great job all season, or all series, and all season. But in Game 7, Stephen Curry was just too much for the Kings to handle, even with Klay Thompson shooting 4 for 19 from the field, which is by his standards just crazy.
I mean, Curry's a legend. The Warriors are legendary. I went to game 5 in Sacramento. I think we did our first show. By the way, this is Lucas Siegel. He's going to be going to Georgetown next year. Family friend, big time Bay Area sports fan. I actually see a lot of him and me as far as his passion for all this stuff at a younger age. So he's going to be coming on some shows now. And we did one before the draft, obviously before game 5, before I drove down to Sacramento to see the Warriors beat the Kings in game 5. And at that point, we said, hey, game 5 is going to be the pivotal game. If the Warriors win that, they're going to coast. It's going to be easy. It was anything but that because the Kings turned around. It looked like the Warriors were tired in game 6. And that's the magic of having a legend like Curry, right? Everybody was saying, oh, the Warriors have finally run out of gas. I was talking to my buddy Lorenzo. He's a big Warriors guy, and he said, it looks like their bench isn't as deep as it used to be. It looks like they're older. The Kings are younger. They spent all that energy and they got the 3-2 lead, but they probably won't be able to bring it across the finish line. But how quickly things changed in about 36 hours. And it was because they had the best player on the floor and the Kings didn't, right? I mean, like you said, Klay wasn't on in the first half, but Steph was. Steph was on the whole game. And to see him suck the energy out of that building today reminded me of what I saw from the Warriors in game 5. Obviously, it was more Draymond in that game with the 20-plus points. But Kevon Looney, both times, when you have the best scorer in Steph Curry and then you have the guy that's just mopping up rebounds and playing that toughness role, I think that you're going to be really hard to beat as a championship pedigree team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Stephen Curry, what he's doing at age 35 right now is unheard of, really, for a guard. The longevity, the way that he's gotten stronger in a lot of ways, even since he was winning MVPs 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, he's now the same age that Michael Jordan was during that Last Dance season. And while
Wow,
everyone
that's
around the
true.
Warriors has said this isn't the Last Dance per se,
He's got a lot
there
left.
are some similarities between that Last Dance team and this team, and you see Stephen Curry just showing up when it matters most, and dragging them really across the finish line today. He's had help from different guys throughout the season and the series, but this was, even though it was the first round, this was a legacy defining moment for one of the greatest players and the greatest shooter of all time.
That's an awesome thought. It's a great summary. Warriors Lakers is next. We're going to get to that in a bit. I know a lot of people tune in for 49ers news, so I just want to talk about the 49ers rookie class first, Lucas, because hell, this 49ers rookie class is an interesting one. I called this a thinking man's draft. We were texting a bit during the course of the draft this weekend. By thinking man's draft, I mean the 49ers have a stacked roster and drafting gets progressively harder year after year, the better that your roster gets. I mean, you could just throw a bunch of darts up against the wall with good, valuable picks in 2017 if you're the 49ers, and some things are going to hit. And it obviously did. George Kittle, 5th rounder, came out of that draft. DJ Jones with a 6th rounder coming out of that draft. They obviously saw success in those early years in the NFL draft on the aggregate to build the roster they have now. But since they do have the roster they have now they, and they don't have picks, they didn't pick until number 87 after trading up from number 99. You have to be much more specific with your picks. You have to select guys that have a good chance of making the football team. Otherwise, you're just wasting draft picks. And that's what the 49ers try to do with this 9-player class. You have it up on the screen right here. From Jair Brown of Penn State, the safety, all the way down to Jalen Graham of Purdue, the linebacker. And then moving toward the undrafted free agents, here is the roster. All of the 49ers rookies are highlighted in yellow. The 49ers added a lot of players, and they continue to add a lot of players. As I last checked, they're at 86 out of 90. So they have 4 more to add. And, one thing, Lucas, before, we get your thoughts on this draft class, I asked John Lynch about it yesterday. He didn't deny it. The 49ers restructured Christian McCaffrey's contract leading into draft weekend, freed up nearly $9 million in room. They didn't need any money to pay this draft class because it is a lower slotted draft class. So they opened up the money at just coincidentally, maybe not, at just the time when further free agent signings will not count against the compensatory formula. So if there are edge rushers like Yannick Ngakoue, Justin Houston, those kind of guys still on the market, which there are, if there are edge rushers that the 49ers didn't want to sign before because they love picking up comp picks and that would hurt them, they can now add those players moving forward. They still have 4 open roster spots, and they now have money to do it. So we saw the 49ers add this weekend, but they may not be done yet. And to me, that's exciting because we have stuff to talk about as this offseason progresses after this busy, busy draft weekend.
Yeah, I thought there were some interesting things about the draft. And obviously, Shanahan and Lynch in their time with the Niners, they've had some great draft picks. But a lot of these draft picks have been in the middle to later rounds, and that's been talked about extensively in the lead up to this draft, giving people hope with the Niners really not picking for a while into the draft. And I think that we see some chances being taken right here. There are some guarantees, some guys that you probably know what you're going to get from them. And then we have guys where the Niners are really expecting things from them that the rest of the world and the rest of the NFL hasn't necessarily seen. So we were talking about Cameron Latu with that earlier, and I think that'll be an interesting pick to see where that one goes, to see if the Niners are right about him having more left in his body.
You are not a fan of this pick. We talked beforehand, and I'm not sure about it either, right? Were you just scratching your head when they picked Cameron Latu? What was it, a number 101?
Yeah, I thought they were going to take a tight end. I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be that early, and I didn't think it'd be him. But the Niners have shown that they have a track record of getting the right guys in those middle rounds. So it'll be interesting to see where they go and what he can do with it. And I think that he is obviously learning from George Kittle, and he was one of, I think it was 3 guys that Kittle had at his tight end university camp from college. And so he'll be given more than enough opportunity to prove the 49ers right.
Well, here's the graphic on Cameron Latu that I think illustrates that he might not be where the 49ers want him to be right now, but there's a big asterisk by that, and I'll explain. X-axis here is avoided tackles, so how many tackles you forced to be missed, I guess, essentially. Yards after contact. Obviously, George Kittle's a yak monster. He's over to the right, and he's also at the very top when you go by the plot of the y-axis, and that's 10-yard split. So George Kittle has great burst. George Kittle also breaks a lot of tackles. Unfortunately for the 49ers, Cameron Latu, who they just picked, is in the bottom left. Look at that. Bottom left for Cameron Latu. That means he's below average in both, under 25th percentile in 10-yard split and under 50th percentile in avoided tackles. So, just looking at this, you're like, oh boy, what's going on here? This guy doesn't have nearly as good of an athletic and tackle breaking profile as the horde of quality tight ends up here in the upper right. And, obviously asked Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch about this after they picked Cameron Latu, and Shanahan's answer was they think they're still meeting on the bone here. He converted positions before the 2019 season from defensive end to tight end, and they think his body still has a lot to give. They think that there is going to be improvement here. And I guess this goes back to what you were saying, right? That the 49ers do have a successful track record in the middle rounds. You just trust them here? You think that, okay, Latu will develop into that? How do you view that whole dynamic?
Yeah, I definitely think there is something to having switched positions, even though it was at this point 4 years ago. Um, and I think that some of the issues may absolutely be worked out. More time at the position, just more experience, namely probably blocking and being able to catch balls consistently, which were two issues with Latu that viewed from his college tape. I'm not sure how athleticism is significantly going to be improved by more experience playing a new position. Defensive ends, one of the most important things for them is how quickly they get off the line, how quickly they're getting to the backfield, uh, and you see his burst. Really, it's not impressive at all. So that's the one where I'm curious to see if there is that room for improvement in that area. But I think absolutely there is room for improvement in a lot of the more technical areas, and we'll see what happens. But that was really the only pick that I had a big question mark about from that draft.
Well, he's 23 years old, so maybe you say, hey, he's got a little bit more to grow athletically, although he's filled out his frame. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. And, I feel you. I think that, type 2 muscle fibers, they give you that kind of burst. You either have those or you don't. You train them to a certain extent, but there are guys that have it. And then there are guys who are different types of athletes. And, maybe Latu can become a little bit more fluid in the tight end position over time, just with more comfort and training. One thing that the 49ers really liked about him is his recall, his ability to grasp what the offense is doing. Kyle Shanahan, we know, is a Texas alumnus. Steve Sarkisian is the head coach at Texas, but Steve Sark, they call him Sark, was the offensive coordinator at Alabama back when Latu transitioned to tight end. So Shanahan talked to Sark. He was in Austin not that long ago. And Sark said, this guy's got photographic memory. This guy understands how not just his position works, but the whole offense works. And he picked that up like really, really quickly. And that really impressed the coaching staff. And by extension, that really impressed Kyle Shanahan. And I think there is something to be said about that, right? Because if you look at the way that Shanahan's offense is constructed, tight end's really the fulcrum. The tight end could be run blocking, or the tight end could go off on a pass pattern. And if you're talking about positionless skill positions and ability to run play action and run out of passing formations and pass out of running formations, it's the tight end that is that tipping point, right? It's the selling point for the run when you're passing and the selling point for the pass when you're running. So the fact that he can grasp the offense really well, I think there definitely is a plus in that for Cameron Latu.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the quarterback issue that everyone seems to really love talking about, me included right now.
We're going to talk about it. Don't worry.
In the NFC Championship game, the play where Purdy got hurt, not a fault of Shanahan at all calling that play. You got to call that play in order for the offense to be successful. But you had a tight end who was one-on-one blocking a defensive end there, and for whatever reason, the job didn't get done right, and Purdy ended up on the ground, out for the rest of the game, and a question mark heading into this next season. So I think tight end has proven to be extremely important beyond George Kittle, because we know when he's healthy what we're going to get from George Kittle. I hope that there's a second guy that we can trust to block, to catch, and to perform all of the intricacies within Shanahan's offense.
Yeah, you're talking about the Son Reddick play, just bursting around Tyler Kroft there, who's no longer on the roster. Obviously didn't go the way the 49ers drew it up, and it's probably even more frustrating for them when you look back at the All-22. Brandon Ayuk was coming open. Deebo Samuel, ahead of the interview, I think he said that James Bradbury was trash, right? He was calling James Bradbury a trash corner, and he said, hey, if we would have held up in protection a little bit longer, if Purdy wouldn't have gotten hurt, this is a game that we would have torched them. That's what Deebo Samuel said. So that just shows you how important that protection is. I got a little cough there. Man, I wasn't even yelling at all watching the Warriors game. I was sitting at Top Golf in San Jose, right near Levi Stadium. I just got back here from doing all the draft stuff. They have a massive screen there. I wish I could actually share it. Yeah, actually, I think I put it up on Twitter. It was
What was
awesome.
the split there between Warriors and Kings fans?
I would say 70-30. There were a few Kings fans for sure. Maybe 75-25 Warriors Kings. Now, when I was at the arena at Golden One Center a couple days ago, I was shocked at how few Warriors fans there were. I thought that it'd be, a little bit more of a split. It was almost all Kings fans. And they said that game one was like 99% Kings fans. So they did a good job. Sacramento did holding their ground as far as fan split in the arena. I don't know what it was like at Chase Center, but it was just cool to see those two Northern California teams play. Yeah, we're going to talk about the quarterback position in just a minute, but Warriors Lakers. I mean, this is going to be awesome now because you're going to go from the NorCal battle to your true San Francisco LA battle, right? We saw Giants Dodgers play in the playoffs in 2021. That ended up being a great series. But now, I mean, we've seen Steph LeBron over and over again 4 times back when LeBron was in Cleveland. LeBron wearing a Lakers uniform going up against the Warriors and Steph later in the stages of this dynasty. This ups the coolness level in my mind 10x.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Out of any of the series that we're now looking at for the Warriors, we have the Lakers, and then if we were to get through that, it'd be the winner of Nuggets Suns, and in the Eastern Conference, anything can happen. But I think the Celtics are probably the favorite to get through there, especially with Embiid's health questions. This is the series that stresses me out the least. I think, but I think one thing that'll be very interesting is the Kings played the fastest basketball in NBA history, the most proficient offense in NBA history. Yes, in an offense crazy league this year, but that series was played at a pace that is going to be nothing like the pace in the Warriors Lakers series. I think it was Steph who was talking about it after the game on the national broadcast, but he was saying that the Lakers are going to be a challenge, but a very different challenge for the
Yeah.
Warriors. And I think especially with the way that Steve Kerr adjusted throughout that series to really match up against the Kings, playing guys in ways he hasn't played them before. I mean, Looney was playing 35 minutes a game,
What
doing
a
great,
stud,
but
though,
you've
man.
never seen that out of him. I
Yeah.
think it'll be very interesting to see how the Warriors approach the Lakers, but I see the Warriors winning that series in 5 or 6 games, honestly, because I don't think the Lakers have the shooting to consistently knock down shots when we really key in on the guys that we're scared about hurting us.
Yeah, I mean the how analytically oriented the Kings were and how young they were compared to the Warriors, the pace that you're talking about, that was a real threat to the Warriors. And I think that a lot of people thought that threat had completely realized itself by the time the game 6 hit and the Kings blew them out. They said, "Oh, the Warriors can't keep up with this kind of firepower anymore. They're getting too old." Now it's almost like a sigh of relief. Yeah, it's LeBron, but it's also it's an aging LeBron, right? This is not LeBron in his prime, and it's not these Kings in their, I wouldn't even say prime. I think the Kings might still be a rising stock, but the Warriors can now be the team that presses the accelerator a little bit more. The Lakers
Yeah.
don't play at nearly the tempo that the Kings played. So one advantage that LA has is that they have a little extra rest. They didn't have to go through a game 7. They beat Memphis by 40.
Yeah.
So Tuesday
But the
night,
Warriors do have home court.
yeah, they do. Are you going to make it back here? I know you're on the East Coast right now. You're going to make it back, make it to any Warriors playoff games? I know that
I'll be negotiating with my parents on that one. I'll do my best for sure.
well, your brother got some screen time.
Yeah, he
What was
did.
it?
He did.
Game 2? No, that was game 4,
I think it
right?
was game 4. Yeah,
Game
they put him
4.
up on the screen. He was in awe of Steph's abilities, as I think many basketball fans were these last couple weeks. It was crazy.
That was cool. Awesome. All right, let's move on to the discussion that we hinted at earlier. The quarterback position. Supposedly, I didn't even see this, but people are complaining on Twitter that Ian Rappaport has hinted that Trey Lance is third on the 49ers quarterback pecking order right now. I personally don't see anything controversial about that because the 49ers have already announced that there's some sort of pecking order in their heads when they said that Brock Purdy is the favorite. Shanahan and Lynch have both said that. And if football's a meritocracy, then Sam Darnold has done more in his career than Trey Lance. They're both number 3 overall picks, right? 2018 versus 2021. But Darnold has played for longer, and the 6-game stretch that he delivered to close last season was more impressive than anything Lance has ever done. fans are all up in arms about this. But if I had to, just write down the list of where the 49ers quarterbacks stand right now, obviously the injury for Purdy is something you have to ignore, but just list if they were all healthy, I'd put Purdy 1, I'd put Darnold 2, I'd put Lance 3. Doesn't mean that's where it's going to end up. Lance and Darnold are both going to have an opportunity while Purdy is out this offseason to prove that they deserve more playing time, or at least that number 2 role. But what are your thoughts on the way that this is shaping up as far as, order of quarterback in Kyle Shanahan's head?
Yeah, I mean, I think Shanahan and Lynch have said that when healthy, Brock has the inside track to starting, and things can
Yep.
change with that. But I don't think that that's really a debate about what the facts are. People can debate about what it should be, but I think the fact is Purdy's the number one in an ideal world right now for the Niners. I think that you can argue both ways as far as Darnold and Lance. Darnold is a couple years older. He is probably more of a known commodity than Lance, who really hasn't played a lot of high level football, let alone NFL football, having gone to North Dakota State and playing, I think, only one full season there with COVID and everything. But it also it's the last day of April. We're not going to be seeing the Niners playing football until August, and we're not going to be seeing them playing meaningful football until September. And I think that, especially now that Trey Lance has been cleared, him and Darnold will go this summer, and they'll both get the opportunity to show what their talents are, how they've grown, and what they can offer to this offense. I personally don't see them as a 2 and 3. I see them as two guys competing to be the guy until Purdy's back, and then you cross that bridge when you get there. Because I think there's something to drafting a guy number 3 overall 2 years ago, and he was the starting quarterback last year until he got injured, and then we went Garoppolo, Purdy, and had that mess in Philadelphia. But people like to say, "Oh, quarterbacks shouldn't lose their jobs when they get injured." That's just not a reality. You mean going with the Niners, you have Kaepernick and Alex Smith. Alex Smith got a concussion. Kaepernick took over. He was the guy. We made
Young in
2 NFC
Montana.
championship games, Super Bowl. Yeah, young in Montana. And I think we saw a similar thing play out a little bit in New Orleans last year, where Jameis Winston got hurt. Andy Dalton then started playing quarterback. He didn't light the world on fire, but he was the guy even when Jameis came back. And it's going to be on Trey Lance to prove it, because Purdy's proven in a short sample that he's been great for the franchise. Darnold, they wouldn't have gotten him if they didn't see a role for him. And now it's on Lance to show what he can do.
Yeah, I think if Trey Lance was given anything, it was going to happen once, right? Because of the draft status. You had to see or give him that chance to show what he had, even if he wasn't the best quarterback on the roster last year. Jimmy Garoppolo was the best quarterback on the roster last year, but it did benefit Trey Lance that Jimmy was hurt in the offseason. He was coming off of the surgery, so he wasn't able to participate in training camp. So essentially, the starting job was gift wrapped to Trey Lance last season. The 49ers can't afford to do that twice. It's too bad that Lance got hurt in week 2. Sometimes it's how it works in football, but now you have to adapt to the new reality, and you're talking about it right now. It's 2023 now. Trey's coming back off an injury, but in the meantime, while he's been out, Brock Purdy has shown up. I mean, that
Yeah,
came out of left field, but it's happened. And he
yeah,
has a more impressive resume than both Trey Lance and Sam Darnold now. So that's why they're saying he has the inside track. And, just by saying that Purdy has the inside track, you're not saying that Lance is completely out of the mix. You're saying that he's got some ground to make up, and you're saying that nothing's going to be gift wrapped anymore just because circumstances have changed over the course
absolutely.
of this past year, right?
Yeah, and drawing a parallel back to the Warriors, who, when they got some draft picks and had that season where guys were hurt, they created this 2 timeline plan. And I liken Lance a little bit to James Wiseman in that sense,
Yeah.
where the Warriors drafted James Wiseman with the idea of making him the face of the next generation for the Warriors, and keeping him in the fold for trying to finish out the dynasty with more championships. We saw that it just didn't work with James Wiseman. He wasn't able to get the minutes without sacrificing the win now mentality that you have to have when you have guys like Steph and Curry. With the 49ers, Trey Lance easily could be the best quarterback on the roster among these guys in 5 years, in 3 years, in 10 years. But when you have such high level talent that you're paying to win now, and you've been so close for the last few years, you unfortunately have to make decisions based on what's going to win you a Super Bowl this year, not what's going to win you the next 5 Super Bowls. Because in the NFL, there are no guarantees. Anything in an instant.
Well, yeah, what a great illustration there. What a great comparison. The two timeline plan. The 49ers were trying for that definitely in 2021 and then moving into 2022. 21, they decided to keep Jimmy Garoppolo because Trey Lance was nowhere near ready to start, coming off of one season, and it had been a while since he played at North Dakota State. So they had two QBs. I remember in training camp of 2021, I don't know if you remember this, but Kyle Shanahan was dabbling in a lot of potential creativity as far as using Trey Lance. He was thinking about using, I shy away from saying this, to a two quarterback system, because people get the wrong idea. They think that they're splitting snaps 50-50, but he had a lot of Lance packages in the preseason. Against the Raiders, they were actually subbing him in and out. And Shanahan, on record, I asked him about this, and he gave a great answer, great quote. This was during training camp after a practice. He said, you know what? I've got a lot of running backs on a roster. I've got a lot of wide receivers on a roster. They all play different roles. They sub in and out of the game. I don't know why I can't do that at quarterback. Why don't we do this at quarterback? We have Jimmy with one skill set. We have Trey with one skill set. Let's combine those two skill sets. And I think Shanahan tried hard to make that work. But the last time that we truly saw it at play over an extended stretch was the preseason game against the Raiders, where Trey Lance broke his finger. Right.
Yeah. And then you had that touchdown right before halftime in, I think it was the Packers game that year.
Yes. And he also scored the first touchdown of that season against the Lions.
Right. Yeah.
In week 1. But I think that was just a very butchered, compromised version of what Kyle Shanahan had initially envisioned, because Trey couldn't throw. He chipped his finger, and it took a long time for the whole arm thing to settle itself. Remember, he had to get his arm back in shape and all that. So I think there was more to that plan in 2021. And then the 49ers struggled to begin the season too while Lance was hurt. And then they caught fire late. And at that point, you're not going to mess with anything. So that was a little bit derailed, kind of like how the Warriors Wiseman plan had to take a back seat, right? I think there was injury issues there too, right?
So he missed a year with meniscus.
Yeah, the meniscus. So then you moved into 2022. Jimmy was supposed to be gone. The 49ers thought they were going to be able to trade him. They couldn't because of the surgery. So he ended up coming back, and that ended up saving their season. That was great for the 49ers. But you look at their plan with Lance, they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. They said, hey, Jimmy's better right now, but he's too expensive. At least they thought he was going to be too expensive. They got him back at a discount later on. But we can have a cheaper quarterback in Trey. We can develop him, and the roster around him can elevate him through the season to the level where by the time the playoffs hit, the 49ers said, Trey Lance, the plan is that he'll be developed enough by then. He'll take his lumps early. Playoffs will hit. He'll be able to guide us. That was an ambitious plan. We never got to find out if it would have worked. We do know that the beginning was very rough in the monsoon at Chicago, but then obviously Lance got hurt in week 2. Garoppolo took over, and then the whole Purdy curveball came in after Garoppolo got hurt. So it's just fascinating to look at what the 49ers initially charted out and what's happened. They've ended up in a good spot either way right now, but a lot of it has not been because of what they actually planned.
Yeah, I think 49ers have had multiple plans over the last couple of years. None of them have really been what they've gone with. But if anything, I think it's proven that quarterback is a less important position for the 49ers than it is for a lot of other teams. In Kyle Shanahan's offense, you need the ball on time, and you just need all the cogs to be oiled well and moving in the right direction. And that's a skill within itself. But the offense doesn't need guys to be making hero plays all the time at the quarterback position, which I think lends itself to Purdy and Darnold being successful in that offense, because they just keep the ball moving. And what we have to see is if Trey Lance can do that while also doing the spectacular, because we know he's capable of the spectacular. I don't know if we've seen him being capable of the ordinary.
So, that's interesting, and that's a big point of debate amongst 49ers fans, right? How important is quarterback in Kyle's system? Because, within that, there are some contradictions, right? We could say Kyle's scheming everything up, but then he made a massive swing to go for a high upside quarterback in Trey Lance. Also, the bottom has fallen out of this offense when quarterbacks like Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard have had to play for an extended period of time. So it has taken a certain level of skill, and the only two quarterbacks to really successfully execute the offense at an efficient level over an extended stretch of time have been Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. Trey Lance, I don't think the sample size is big enough yet, but the efficiency numbers so far haven't been great. A lot of inconsistency there over a smaller sample. So to me, I think it's still undefined. Like how, what caliber of quarterback do you need to really make this click? Because so far, two have made it click well enough for the 49ers to win games. And they did take that swing on Trey Lance. And now what they have is three quarterbacks who should be capable, right? I mean, you have to believe in Trey Lance's ability at some level. Sam Darnold finished up last season in a system that has some similarities with the 49ers system, playing really good football. And obviously, we saw what Brock Purdy did. In my opinion, when you have so many things that have gone off script, as they have for the 49ers over the past couple of years, your best course of action is just load up on options and realize that there is going to be some randomness, that there are going to be some things that you're not really charting for. And the best way to overcome those waves, the best way to, push forward is by having quarterback options. So you're not, stuck at the NFC Championship game without any options anymore. And that's kind of how the 49ers have set themselves up, right? That's why it's hard to define exactly who's one, who's two, who's three, because we don't even know when Purdy's going to be back. But assuming they do have three decently capable quarterbacks, they feel it will work itself out over the course of the season.
Yeah, and they were talking about bringing in a fourth guy as well, as a UDFA, and I think that the more the merrier, honestly, as far as depth at the quarterback position, because you don't want to be put in a situation like you were last year, where a team that had won 12 games in a row, I think, and was really firing on all cylinders, didn't even have a chance because they couldn't run their offense at all. And it was sad to see the season come to an end in that way.
So, because the season did come to an end in that way, they made sure to pick up a higher end backup, and that's Sam Darnold. I made this graphic a few weeks ago when I wrote an article on Darnold just to showcase the efficiency that I think really sold the 49ers. I mean, he was a guy that was throwing way too many picks in his
Yeah.
first 4 years in the league. Adjusted net yards per attempt, which is the column here on the right, that factors in interceptions, touchdown passes, average. And, anything less than 6 isn't very good. But anything over 6 is above average, and over 7 is really good. Look at Darnold's numbers. By the way, interception rate, the league average is like 2.6%. So if you're above that, not good. If you're below that, that's good. Look at how everything seemed to click for Darnold with Carolina over the final 6 games of 2022. He had a below average interception rate in a good way, and the adjusted net yards per attempt were above 7. That was, I think, would have ranked number 5 out of all quarterbacks if he had enough games. He didn't have enough games, though. He only had 6.
Yeah.
The sample size is small, but obviously the 49ers saw something there, Lucas, and what they did see, because I've talked to some people and I've watched the tape. What they did see is Carolina actually led the league in yards after the catch per reception when Darnold was the quarterback. Guess who was number 2? The 49ers. So we always talk
Yeah.
about the 49ers as being the best yak team in the league. When Sam Darnold took over for Carolina, they run kind of a positionless skill position offense. They, Laviska Shenault, the big receiver out of Colorado's lining up in the backfield. They're doing a lot of the same stuff the 49ers do. And Darnold operated that kind of scheme really efficiently, setting up the yak. And then you saw the efficiency numbers. I think Kyle saw those final 6 games in Carolina. He already had liked Sam Darnold's skill set before. They tried to trade for him in 2021. But when he saw him running the offense like that, he said, okay, he's going to be a free agent this offseason. Let's go get this guy, because I think at the worst, he could be a competent backup in the 49ers system.
Yeah. Do I think that Sam Darnold is going to be the next great quarterback in the NFL? No, probably not. There
Yeah.
are still issues with him. If there weren't, a team would have picked him up and made him their starter, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But especially in the last games in Carolina last year, he showed some upside and that he can do some things. He took care of the football through the air, and he set guys up to run after the catch. Completion percentage, fumbles, there are issues there, but the 49ers have shown an ability to take these quarterbacks and put them in a position to succeed. And I think that Darnold shares a lot of the similarities that made Garoppolo and Purdy so successful within the offense of getting the ball in the right spot at the right time and keeping the offense like a well-oiled machine. And that's why I think they're giving him this opportunity and adding him to this quarterback room. They're not making him the quarterback, but they're putting him in the quarterback room, which I don't see much downside in that.
No, it's a low downside, high upside move, and his contract reflects that. We can always follow the money in these situations. He's going to be making about $4 million at minimum, but that's expandable to over $11 million, which is more than Baker Mayfield's contract is expandable to. I think as soon as I saw this deal and I saw the $7 million of incentives, I said, "Whoa." Because Sam Darnold doesn't sign a deal that he doesn't have a chance of making the incentives work, right? So there's obviously some hope from his perspective that I could reach some of these incentives. And the 49ers, don't offer that much money unless they're really trying to lure Sam Darnold in. So I think that it makes sense to have an expandable deal like they have with Darnold that, you basically pay as he plays and you just see where it ends up. Again, you're throwing darts up against the wall and hoping that you hit the bullseye with at least one of these quarterbacks in the 2023 season. Why don't we open up to some questions here? This is going to be a 49ers Warriors Q&A. I'm putting down a text title. I'll pick a few questions here, Lucas, before we get going. I know, what is it, 8 p.m. where you are? You're on the East Coast, right? So
it is, yeah, it's 8 p.m.
Wow. It's a totally different experience for a 12:30 game. The Warriors played at 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 for
Yeah.
you. It's crazy. It's a big country, 3-hour time difference. All right, we're waiting for some questions to come through. It seems like a lot of people arguing. That's what it usually is in the chat section. But then you give it a few minutes and the questions will roll in. So we have the 49ers draft class right here. If you have questions about the draft class, I'll put that up on the screen. Here's your list of players that we can talk about. We also have the depth chart up. But everybody, stop arguing. Hop into that chat section with some good questions. Lucas is obviously very knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than me about the Warriors. I know a lot of people are still buzzing about that win. Somebody's asking about the XFL. I haven't been watching the XFL, Lucas. So maybe we'll skip that question for now. But if you have been, you could chime in. This
I
is a
haven't
good one,
watched a
right?
lot of XFL.
You watch a lot?
I have not watched a lot of XFL.
Yeah. I don't think I have either. So we'll skip that and we'll go to this right here. What do you think they're going to use the Christian McCaffrey money for? So that's 8.6 million freed up. They got like 10 or 11 million now. They can sit on it, right? Cap space that's unused carries over. And also it's nice to have a buffer in case you do make another trade this next year, because the one area where you can't really restructure deals if you trade for a contract. You trade for a player's contract midseason, you better have enough space to fit that into your cap situation. Last year, McCaffrey had a cheap cap number, 690,000 for the 49ers, so that worked. But if they want to trade for somebody else this year because they have the draft capital to do it, they're going to want a buffer. So they could sit on the money, but they can also turn around and sign one of these edge rushers. What do you think they're going to do with it?
Yeah, I think there's a chance they do sign an edge rusher. I also think that there's a chance that they see an offensive lineman out there that they think might be a good fit. They didn't take an O lineman in the draft. I was a little surprised. I thought they might take one in the later rounds just because to see if they can get some depth out there, because O linemen, especially in Shanahan's offense with all the moving pieces, it's a very important position across the board at guard, tackle, and center. So I think that might be something they consider, unless they really do trust Colton McKivitz to start at right tackle. And if not, they could go an edge, or they could easily save it into the season, because as we saw last year, sometimes circumstances change at other teams across the league, and you have an opportunity to get a guy that can really turn your season around.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, it sets you up with option power. So you have option power through the players on your roster, and you option power some of the money that the 49ers have. And the Christian McCaffrey contract restructure allows them to have some more of that moving forward. All right, more questions. More questions. Let's see. Here's a good one. Who's your guest? He's super knowledgeable. My guest is that's why they can't see your name, Lucas. This is my fault. There it is. Lucas Siegel is my guest. He is very knowledgeable. Family friend. He's only 18 and he's this knowledgeable, which is awesome. He's going to be headed to Georgetown next year. Figured we get him on the show just so I have some back and forth conversation and give him a chance to start developing his on-camera presence. So everybody, let's give Lucas a round of applause. He's doing a great job, and he's very knowledgeable about more than just the Niners, which is really cool. I mentioned this in the show where he first came on. I think it was last Tuesday, right? I remember meeting Lucas, and he was like 5 or 6, and I walk into to his house, and he's sitting on the ground reading the sports page of the San Francisco Chronicle, the Sporting Green. Kind of reminded me of how I was when I was 5 or 6 years old. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it. And let's move on to another one right here. This is a good one for Lucas. How do the Warriors match up with the Lakers?
The question is going to be who on each team can guard the other team's best player. I think it's going to be a big question mark for the Lakers on who can guard Steph Curry. We saw the Kings throw a lot of things at him. Davion Mitchell had some success, but at the end of the day, no one was able to contain Steph in Game 7. He dropped 50, and that's the reason that the Warriors are moving on to the next round. I think that LeBron and AD with the Lakers especially are going to cause issues for the Warriors. You saw Kevon Looney do a great job on Sabonis, just really working hard that whole series. But Anthony Davis is a different animal. We can't sit in the paint and let him shoot mid-range jumpers because he will knock them down. And obviously, LeBron James is LeBron James. He's older than he was when we saw him with the Cavaliers in the finals, but he's still not a guy that you can ignore either to score the ball or to facilitate and get the ball to his teammates. My biggest concern, if I were a Lakers fan, would be who else is going to knock down shots. With the Warriors, you see inconsistencies, but you have a lot of guys that are capable of knocking down shots. I don't necessarily see that same capability with the Lakers, especially from long range. You have D'Angelo Russell, you have Rui Hachimura, you have Jared Vanderbilt, you have Austin Reeves. All of these guys can go get a bucket, but I don't necessarily think there's a guy that's going to make the Warriors pay for collapsing around the key guys.
I'm trying to find what the spread is to open this series right now. I would guess it's going to be Warriors -4, something like that. What would your guess be?
My guess would be at home, the Warriors, I'd give it 4.5 or 5.5.
And, one thing I would look out for is the fatigue factor because the Lakers have had a little bit extra rest. But,
yeah,
I mean, this Kings series was cutthroat. What was that?
They do have one day more. It says here the spread is Warriors -4.5.
That's what I guessed.
Which means in Los Angeles, assuming nothing changes, it'll be pretty close to a pick 'em with the home court advantage that they're giving the Warriors in Vegas there.
Well, this is another game or another basketball series that is really a battle between 49ers fans because the 49ers have a massive fan following in LA. There are a lot of Lakers-Niners combo fans, right? Just like there are a lot of Kings-Niners combo fans. So it's interesting to keep this all out on the West Coast. And like I said, LeBron in that Lakers jersey, that to me, that's a bigger deal than him in a Cavs jersey. I can't take the Cavs seriously.
Yeah.
You can take the Lakers seriously,
We saw SoFi turned into Levi's South. I don't think we'll see the same thing at what's it called now?
Crypto.com Arena.
But I think it's going to be an intense series. I think it's a blessing for the Warriors and for the Lakers. A lot of their best players are on the older side, and travel will be pretty light between those two cities for the games, but only one day between each game, which means fatigue will really set in the longer that series goes.
Switching back to 49ers here to wrap things up. Nice 45-minute show. Robert asks, are the Eagles a stronger threat now compared with last year? I don't think so. I think that, they lost Javon Hargrave, and they didn't just lose Javon Hargrave, who was a straw that, stirred that drink. They lost him to the 49ers. So when you measure how strong of a threat the Eagles are, you also have to measure how good their competition is. And the fact that you saw Hargrave defect from one team to the other, and the 49ers' weakness was the interior defensive line, so they addressed that. I don't see I think the Eagles did a really good job in the draft, but we'll see. That's just an opinion right now. I don't know how Jalen Carter is going to translate to the NFL. There were red flags on him in that combine, in that pro day workout. He was barely able to finish it. He was not looking like he was in the best shape. We'll see how Jalen Carter does. I don't think it's reasonable to expect him to reprise Javon Hargrave's role 100% in year one. Yeah, they picked up Nolan Smith as well in that first round. So a strong defensive line theoretically is replenishing itself. But again, I think the 49ers have gotten a little bit better along the front lines, and we'll have to see if the Eagles did. So at the very best, I would say that the Eagles are a similar threat to how they were last year, but they have a lot to prove to show that they overcame some of the losses that occurred in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, this has been talked about a little bit as well. I compare it a little bit to what the Niners did in 2020, trying to replace DeForest Buckner with Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah.
Obviously, so far that hasn't gone very well. DeForest Buckner has been outstanding with the Colts. Kinlaw has struggled to stay on the field and struggled to make an impact when he has been on the field. And there are absolutely questions with Carter for the Eagles. You can say, oh, there were a lot of other things going on for his pro day workout, and that's an explanation for why he didn't do well. And you'd be right to say that, but how do we know that that issue won't continue to roll into his NFL career? And even if it doesn't, replacing a guy who was so important to your team, it's not as simple as just drafting a guy in the top 10. You see a lot of guys who are drafted highly, who are regarded very highly with no red flags, and they don't do the same job that a guy in his late 20s is able to do.
Fair enough. We'll see. I can't wait to see the schedule come out. I think May 11th is the day that they're saying that the schedule is going to come out. So we'll see when the 49ers visit Philly. I know we had dinner before that game last year. Didn't go well for the 49ers after that. Dinner was good, though. That place was cool. Exactly. It was like breaking out into Eagles chants every 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was scary walking through there and talking about the Niners. I definitely knew I was in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And after the game, taking the subway back from the game, I was with my grandpa, my dad, and my brother, and we were sticking together, and we hit our Niners jerseys in our jacket. I'm a little bit ashamed to say that I took off the red because I didn't want to be called out.
Yeah, well, it might have been more dangerous if the 49ers had won, to be honest. But
true.
At that point, well, what are the Eagles fans going to do? You probably would have been on the receiving end of some taunting. But that's cool that you did get to take the subway. I took it to the game. I was then at the stadium for a long time riding after, so I just Ubered after. But I wanted to get the full experience heading to the stadium. And I still remember when we hit that final stop, everybody just got out, and it was like this mass of people just headed to the trash cans to throw out their beers that they had for what was at most a 15 or 20-minute ride. So they had a lot of extra beer after that, and the cops are just watching everybody dump their stuff. And the vibe was on point, I'll tell you that much. It was a great vibe for an NFC title game, but that game was ruined by the fact that Brock Purdy was hurt so soon. So I'm looking forward to a rematch, seeing the 49ers and the Eagles again. All right, Lucas, thanks for joining, man. It was another fun one.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We'll talk to everybody soon. Some more draft content coming tonight. And obviously, we talk some basketball here, so we got to catch up on who the 49ers have signed as undrafted free agents. Everybody talk soon. Have a great Sunday evening.